All right. The Australian Open draw is out for 2025, and big things are going to happen. This is one of the most fair and kind of even draws I've seen on the men's side, at least for a long time. The big news for me is Sinner and Alcaraz on opposite sides of the draw. And I think I can speak for most tennis fans as saying that's a relief, because to me, those are the two best Grand Slam players on the men's side clearly over the last year, and to have them on the same side of the draw would have been a disaster, but they're not. So Djokovic is in the Alcaraz quarter on the bottom half of the draw with Zverev. A lot going on there. So we're going to break it all down. We're going to break down the women's draw. Sabalenka going for 3 in a row. We've got a lot to talk about. This is the slice presented by Betway. Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. If you are new here and your first time ever here at the Slice, welcome. This is your home for the next over 2 weeks while the Australian Open goes on down under. And I'm your host, Stephen Boughton. Thanks for being here. Please subscribe. Don't miss anything. We've just recorded a couple of exclusive interviews with Denis Shapovalov and Felix Auger-Aliassime. If you didn't know, we are based here in Canada. And it's going to be a fantastic tournament. The draw just came out, so we're riding high off that. I'm excited about this draw and how it's shaping. I really think it's one of the most even, fairest draws that I've seen in a long time. I was looking at my top 4 favorites who we talked about in our power rankings. On the men's side are Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Zverev. Not in that order. You're going to have to wait to see my predictions and who I actually think has the easiest draw. But I was trying to look at all the way routes all the way through to the final. And it's really hard to say one guy's route is harder than another, or one guy's draw is much harder than another. They are fairly even, I would say. And that's a good thing, I think. No whining and complaining for the fan bases right off the draw here. So let's get into it. This is the Australian Open 2025 draw preview here on the Slice. If you're new here, this is what we always do. We break down the full, like the potential quarterfinals is usually where we start. So we look at who's on who's, quarters and sides of the draw. And then we go down routes to the final for the contenders, and we look at their eighths, and we look at every first round match, and we break it all down. So we're going to do that for the men's and the women's. Let's get into it. But first, shout out to Betway. They are our presenting sponsor, and the Slice is presented by Betway. I will be giving picks and tips on the Betway feed, which if you download their app and check out the Betway feed, I post videos on there talking about the odds and about different matchups that I see. We have a lot of fun with that. So shout out to Betway. Link below if you want to bet responsibly on the Australian Open. Okay, because there's lots to look at. Let's just say that. All right. We've got the potential quarterfinals. We're starting with the men. Sinner, de Minaur on the top. They could play in the quarterfinals. And if you saw JP on the podcast, de Minaur, he was high on his radar for power rankings, maybe making an Australian Open Cinderella story, running all the way, winning the tournament. He thinks it's possible. Some people might disagree with that after they see that de Minaur will likely play Sinner in the quarterfinals if they meet, and Sinner has a current 9-0 head-to-head record against de Minaur. So it'll be a little David versus Goliath, but Sinner's popularity is pretty good, but obviously a little shaky with all the controversy from last year, and de Minaur would be at home playing his little legs off, and he would be trying to cause an upset there. 9-0. de Minaur, the 8th seed, versus Sinner, the 1st seed on the top quarter. If it goes through to the quarters as it is laid out, Taylor Fritz, who's the 4th seed, is also on the top half of the draw, and he would play Daniil Medvedev, who is now the 5th seed. So interesting turn of events there. Daniil Medvedev kind of has, I think, been a top 4 seed for a number of years now. We're used to seeing him up there, but he's not anymore. But he will play Fritz, who's arguably the easier, like if he had to be in any of the other 3 quarters, he'd probably want to be in this one to play Fritz if he gets to that stage. Their head-to-head is 1-1, but Fritz comes in as one of the most confident players on tour for sure. Djokovic, like I said, is in the Alcaraz quarter, and I thought that is a bit of a weird sentence. Typically, it's someone is in Djokovic's quarter, and tough luck for you. It's been nice to know you. But Djokovic is in the Alcaraz quarter, so if they were to make it through to the quarters, which I would guess they would, they will play, which that's awesome to see. We love to see these matchups. We want to see as many of them as that we can before Djokovic finally hangs it up. He's got the Andy Murray in his camp, as you can see here, which is funny because Andy Murray looks jacked. He looks super fit, could play, but he's wearing pants. So you're kind of like, he's not playing. He's a coach now. And he's got a Yonex racket. You got to love it. So Djokovic to play Alcaraz. If they do play, Djokovic is at a 4-3 head-to-head. And then Casper Ruud, the 8th seed. I have that wrong for sure. He's not the 8th seed. What is he? Anyways, if I'm gonna have to, once we go through the draw, I'll find him there because we got a lot of people here on the draw and I can't see it up. But anyways, Ruud is versus Zverev. Will play Zverev if they were to meet. Zverev has the 4-2 head-to-head record there on the bottom quarter. So let's look at routes to the final, shall we? Sinner. Let's start with him. Looking clean, looking strong, looking mean down in Melbourne. And his potential route to the final starts out with Nicholas Jarry. So obviously not a super easy first round. The guy can absolutely mash the ball. Again, Sinner doesn't really affect Sinner. I think has the most efficient return on tour right now and one of the best serves on tour. So he's going to be able to hold his own and make Jarry miss a lot, I think. But that's a dangerous first round, no matter who we are. Round 2, Taro Daniels, the highest ranked player, he would play there. Round 3, he could play fellow Italian Caboli, the 32 seed. Caboli's, not really on Sinner's level, obviously, but he does know how to game. They've probably played a lot together before, and he's got the type of game that can hurt you, but I think Sinner's too physical for him over 5 sets at this stage. Holger Rune would be Sinner's most likely opponent in round 4, the 13th seed at this point. So that would be pretty interesting. Holger Rune versus Sinner. See where Holger Rune's level is at. For a while, he was right there in that group with Sinner, but then Sinner's obviously elevated and gone into his own stratosphere. That would be the 4th round. And then, like we said, de Minaur, the 8th seed, I believe Ruud is the 6th seed. My mistake earlier. de Minaur would play Sinner in the quarterfinals. And then Sinner could either play Fritz or Medvedev in the semis. And then whoever comes out of the bottom, either Alcaraz, Djokovic, or Zverev. So that's the Sinner route to the final. I think none of it is overwhelming. I think the fact that 3 of my top 4 contenders are on the bottom half is nice for Sinner. Zverev obviously would be number 2 seed, but Alcaraz and Djokovic are on the bottom half. He won't have to play him until the final. So Sinner, I would say, if I had to pick one, I would say he's probably got the easiest route to the final out of the 4 top contenders. And he's got the easiest draw, but we'll look more detailed into who's actually in his 8th and in his quarter. Major path to the final for Djokovic, again, with Coach Andy Murray, Nishesh Bazavarati. I'm going with that. Bazavarati, who is a wild card, who's an amazing American player, who just won or he's in the semifinals now, I think, in Auckland. And he's young. I believe he's 19. So he's got some gusto right now. He's been doing really well in the challengers. And yeah, he's got confidence and a little bit of swag. It'll be a tricky first round for Djokovic there. A lot of youth on the court. Djokovic is used to playing guys more than a decade younger than him, which will be the case there. He could play Pavel Kotov in the second round. And then he's either into Machak at the 26th seed or Opelka if he's healthy and he gets to the third round, who he just lost to in Brisbane. But we won't, who knows there. I think that's probably the hardest third round of the 4, Machak or Opelka. But we'll see. And then if he makes it to the 4th round, he would play Dimitrov if Dimitrov can be healthy, which now just seems like always a question mark. Dimitrov has been playing great, but over 5 sets, I don't, if they're both healthy, I just don't really see it unless Dimitrov's feeling great, doesn't have any injury issues, and plays lights out. But again, like if he's physically fine, I really think he can trouble Djokovic. But if he's not, then he obviously can't. Then it gets to the big, Alcaraz in quarterfinals versus Djokovic. That is as big time as it gets. That would be an amazing matchup and just a crazy quarterfinal. Fun fact, it would be the first time that Djokovic and Alcaraz have played before a semifinal in any tournament ever. That's pretty crazy. They've played, checks notes, 7 times. So they've never met before a semifinal. So this would be it if they were both to make it to the quarterfinal. Djokovic would play Zverev then, and then Sinner probably. So if Djokovic ran the boat or ran the, I don't know how you call it, ran the gauntlet, he would play Alcaraz 3 at the 3rd seed, Zverev as the 2nd seed, Sinner as the 1st seed. So not easy, but doable because he's Novak Djokovic. Do I have to say any more? Okay. Alcaraz, he plays Shevchenko in round 1. He should have obvious favorite there, but Shevchenko's a good player. He plays Nishioka in the 2nd round. I love Nishioka, but that just shouldn't be an issue for Alcaraz in the slightest. Round 3, Thompson, who is playing great. Could be slightly tricky if Alcaraz has an off day, but if he doesn't, should be easy pickings for Alcaraz. Then Jack Draper, 15th seed in the 4th round, starts to get serious. Jack Draper is a great player, has the firepower to compete with Alcaraz, no doubt. And then Djokovic. If Djokovic were to make it there, if they both were, we've already talked about it. That's insane. Then he would have to play Zverev probably, and then Sinner. And that would be insane because Sinner and Alcaraz have never played a big final against each other. So it would be absolutely awesome to see that. And personally, I'm slightly hoping to see that a little bit. Zverev coming in a little bit under the radar, I would say. Wouldn't you? The Zverev train is, coming in with the least news. He said, he believes somebody else other than Sinner Alcaraz are going to win the Australian Open. So is that his latest version of I'll put myself in there? I don't know. But Zverev, he's got a path to the final. Puy as a wild card in the 1st round, Darderi in the 2nd round, Baez 28 seed in the 3rd round. So if he gets there, he probably won't, to be fair. Humbert in the 4th round, 14th seed. That's tricky. The 4th round for all these guys is not easy. It's Runa for Sinner, Dimitrov for Djokovic, Draper for Alcaraz, and Humbert for Zverev. Quarterfinals, Zverev would play Ruud, and then he could play Alcaraz or Djokovic, and then either Sinner or Medvedev or Fritz. So, I think all of their routes to the final are similar. I would say Sinner's is slightly the easiest, and I'd say his draw in general is the best because, like I said, Djokovic and Alcaraz could have been in his half. Djokovic could have been in his quarter, but they're not. So that's, to me, is a good draw for Sinner. So let's get into it. Let's look at the details of the draw. It is on your screen now. You might have to put it full screen. Sinner versus Jerry. Who else is in Sinner's 8th? Holger Rune is at the bottom of the 8th. But Jerry's got Shkulkat, Daniel, Giron, Hanfman, Etcheverry, Cobolli. So I really expect Cobolli Sinner as a 3rd round matchup, the 2 Italians. And then you got Hurkacz also in his 8th, though, the 18th seed. New coach. I'm forgetting now who's his coach. Hurkacz coach. It was Greg Boynton forever, and now it is Nicholas Massou. That's right. Nicholas Massou, which is Dominic Thiem's old coach. Very cool. So we'll see if that works out. The other sleepers you got in there, the unseeded, Kecmanovic, Lajovic, Berrettini, Nori, and Zhizhen Zhang. So, it's definitely not a walk in the park for Rune to get through to play Sinner. We'll see how hot Berrettini's feeling in the Australian sun. Okay, into the second half of the Sinner quarter. This is the Demon Hour 8th. Tsitsipas is the 11th seed at the top of the 8th. He'll play Mickelson in the 1st round. I don't know what it is, but Tsitsipas always seems to get these tough 1st round matches. That's a tough one for him. He could lose that. McCabe will play a qualifier. Gabriel Diallo, friend of the show, Canadian, direct entry into the Australian Open main draw after the amazing run he had at the US Open. He'll play Luca Nardi from Italy. I think on Twitter I said he's playing a wild card, but I think they had it wrong there on the screen, or they have it wrong here. I don't know. But Diallo's playing Nardi. Manarino versus Khachanov. Khachanov's he's been in great form. His ranking's probably not as high as his form has been. He's in the Sinner 8th as well. Francisco Sorrentino will play Bublik. Diego Acosta plays Bergs. Korea will play a qualifier, and Van de Zandschulp will play Demon Hour in the 1st round, which is a tough one for Demon Hour because, as we know, Van de Zandschulp, BVDZ, is a dangerous player, beat Alcaraz literally at the US Open. So he's going to have to watch that. for sure. Okay, so that is the center quarter. I would say, yeah, fairly fair. Fairly fair. And the fact that he doesn't have Djokovic in it makes it a good draw for him, I think. And the fact that Alcaraz isn't on his half makes it, I'd say, the best draw out of the big four contenders. So we're putting a little bit of disrespect to Fritz's name by not putting him as one of the top four contenders, even though he's the fourth seed, but that's how life goes. Fritz to play Brooksby in round one American matchup with Brooksby coming out of a ban and an injury time away from tennis. So he's coming back. We will see his level versus Fritz. That could get interesting. Borna Coric is there in Fritz's eighth. Ben the big name, I will say. A lot of like country matchups here, I've noticed in the first round. Gail Monfils versus Mpeshi Perricard, MP GMPH. MPH, as I like to call him, miles per hour. Biggest server in the game, maybe in history. He'll play Monfils, and then that's going to be a challenge for Fritz if they play. That's for sure. He'll play Shelton, plays Nakashima under that. Ben Shelton used to, we think, had the biggest serve, not for long. Now it's Mpeshi Perricard. Shelton's down to rank 21. C21. We got Carreño Busta versus a qualifier. We've got Denis Shapovalov, recent interview and friend of the show, versus Roberto Bautista Agut. Matteo Arnaldi versus Lorenzo Musetti, another country-on-country matchup. I don't know what this is. Versus Musetti. Rublev, the 9th seed. Crazy. Rublev not being in the top 8 seeds. Like another guy. He's always just kind of been in that top 8 seed. So he's got to build his kind of ranking back up, as you would think he would. As we keep going down here, still in the Fritz quarter, we've got Popper in there. We got Tiafoe at the 17th seed to play Rinderknech, and then we got Medvedev playing a wild card, Samrej from Thailand, I believe. So Medvedev, Fritz quarter, again, seems pretty fair. Doesn't seem overly deadly. This is, if you had to call it a quarter of death, I think Alcaraz would be, you'd say that, because Novak Djokovic, 25-time slam winner, is in it. Not very often that you'd see that, but Alcaraz will play Shevchenko and then potentially Nishikori. But Alexandra Mueller and Ninu Burgess is right there. Burgess was one of the upset kings, I believe, for JP on the podcast. Jordan Thompson's in there. Sebastian Korda's in there. Thanasi Kokkinakis is in there. And like we mentioned before, Jack Draper is in the 8th with Alcaraz. Then we've got Grigor Dimitrov playing Fabio Fognini, unranked Fabio Fognini in the first round. Who else have we got in there? We've got the 24th seed Lehechka, 26th seed Machak, Riley Opelka. And then, as we said, Novak Djokovic will play Bazavarati as a wild card in the first round. So, yeah, that's tough. That's a tough quarter. Dimitrov, Draper, Korda, Thompson, Alcaraz, and Djokovic. That's a tough quarter for Alcaraz. But I believe in him. Again, we'll get to our predictions here in a second, but I believe in him. Casper Ruud, number 6 seed. Number 6 seed is in the Alexander Zverev quarter. In the Zverev 8th, we've got Puig, who he'll play first round. We've got Nick Kyrgios, the guy who's been talking. Might get him on the show soon, to play Jacob Fernley in the first round. Sebastian Baez, 28th seed there. Artur Fils, 20th seed there as well. Otto Virtanen and Ugo Humbert, the 14th seed, rounds out the 8th for Zverev. So Tommy Paul is also in that quarter, the 12th seed. Alejandro Tabilo at the 23 seed. Felix Auger-Aliassime, recent interview, friend of the show, 29th seed. He will play Jan-Lennard Struff in the first round. That's not fun if you're Felix Auger-Aliassime. But I do think if he can get through that round, he can play Jerry Zhang or Fokina, who has fallen off a little bit as well. But then there's Mensik in there, who's unseeded, who's dangerous. He just beat Shelton in Auckland, and Casper Ruud, Munar. So I think all in all for Felix, if he can get through Ruud in the third round, which I definitely believe he can if they played, it is a nice draw for him, I would say. It could be worse for sure as a 29th seed. But there are a lot of sleepers in this whole quarter. Nishikori just did great in Hong Kong. Stricker's a great player. Yeah, a lot of dangerous players actually in this quarter as well in the Alexander Zverev quarter. So that's lots of details. That's lots of looking at the first round matchups. A few of the ones I got circled are Fritz versus Brooksby and GMP versus Monfils. But yeah, prediction time on the men's side. Following up, if you didn't listen to our podcast, based on the draw, Sinner, is in a good position to get through to the final and potentially the most straightforward way out of the top contenders. But if Alcaraz and Sinner are to meet in the final, I'm going to have to go with Carlitos. He's going for the career Grand Slam. He's the 5-set king. Doesn't matter what the haircut he just got. He has proven that he is, when the going gets tough over 5 sets in a major, he is the best player on earth right now. You can't tell me otherwise. So if they get to the final, it'll be the first time they're playing in a big final. And I don't know. I still think Alcaraz is a little more comfortable on the biggest stage with the biggest pressure because he's beaten Djokovic twice in major finals. He's won 4 already. What else do you say? He's beaten Sinner at a major before at the French Open. Obviously, Sinner's, I believe, beaten Alcaraz now as well, or a while back at Wimbledon. But I would go with Alcaraz if I had to predict it. And I think that is my prediction officially for the winner of the Australian Open. So that's my prediction. Carlos Alcaraz from the men to win the Australian Open. If you're going to bet the responsible way with Betway. Okay. With no further ado, let's get to the ladies, to the women's draw, the women's singles draw for the Australian Open. As we all saw, if you watch the draw ceremony, you would have seen that Sabalenka and Qinwen Zheng, the 5th seed, are in the same quarter on the top. So we're talking about potential quarterfinals here for the women. Sabalenka, Zheng, and to me, that is a deadly quarterfinal matchup, and because Zheng was right at the top of a lot of people's picks to do well here at this tournament. She was my 5th power ranking coming in. So, and I believe that's a rematch of last year's final, also in the quarterfinal. So that's not easy if you're Sabalenka, but to me, it's her tournament to lose. And then you've got Coco Gauff as the 3rd seed in the top half to play, or in the same quarter as Jessica Pegula. So it could be an all-American matchup there. And again, Coco Gauff's one of my favorites as well to win the Australian Open. She's on the top half with Sabalenka, with Zhang, with Pegula. So that feels like a pretty dense, difficult top half, if you're asking me. Then on the 3rd quarter, Paulini's quarter, you've got the 6th seed Rybakina in there. And I'm big on Rybakina this tournament. She's had a lot of talk. People are talking in the media. Borny Ivanisevic, but she's also got Stefano Vukov back in the sack, but he can't actually coach. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's actually going to be in her box there. But that could be a great quarterfinal matchup if they're both to be there. Super tall, super short, both absolute ballers. And then on the bottom, Emma Navarro, the 8th seed, is in Iga Swiatek's quarter. So, yeah, a lot of talent on the women's side right now. Those quarters would be stacked if that's how it turned out. The round 1 matches, as we'll throw them on the screen here, are pretty crazy. Sabalenka versus Sloane Stephens, major final winners in the first round. We see this a lot. We seem to see this a lot. Sabalenka in her quarter. Let's make this a little bigger, I would say, so we can see more players. In her 8th, you've got Mira Andreeva on the other side of her 8th, and you've got her playing, like I said, Sabalenka playing Stephens in the first round. You've got Clara Tauson, unranked, who won in Auckland. I mistakenly said in Brisbane. Obviously, Sabalenka won in Brisbane. Clara Tauson won in Auckland coming into this. She'll play Noskova. Maria Frech is there as the 23rd seed. And then, Buskova is playing Andreeva in the first round. So the other half of the Sabalenka quarter, obviously with Qinwen Zhang, who will play quarter, she'll play a qualifier. You got Haley Baptiste in there. You got Laura Siegmund. You've got Potapova. You got Pavlyuchenkova. I said it right. 27th seed. You've got Donna Vekic versus Donna Perry in the first round. You've got Vondrousova, the Wimbledon champ, unseeded in that quarter, in that part of it as well. And you've got Tomljanovic, who is taking a wild card. A lot of these women have just moved like a crazy amount in the last couple of years as far as their ranking. And then Diana Schneider, the 12th seed. So difficult. I would say it's a difficult quarter for Sabalenka. That is not easy. You got Zhang there. You've got a lot of talented players who could cause her issues. Yeah, isn't super. If we're going to look at Sabalenka's route to the final right now, it would be Sloane Stephens, then either Kartal or Buzaz Monero, and then Towson or Noskova. And then it would be probably Mira Andreeva at 14, but then it could either be, most likely Qinwen Zhang, and then it could be Coco Gauff, and then it could be Swiatek or Rybakina. So not easy, but she is the favorite coming in for sure. Okay, Coco Gauff's quarter. She'll play Sofia Kenin in the first round. Another country-on-country first-round match. It's getting out of hand. Buxa is there. Paquette is there as a wild card. And Leylah Fernandez, our lone Canadian in the women's draw. Very disturbing. She'll play Ukrainian Starodubetseva, who I've never heard of before. So sorry about butchering your name. Absolutely. Caroline Mukova is in there, the 20th seed as well. Naomi Osaka, Caroline Garcia, first round matchup. That's a heavyweight tilt. Oh my goodness. On a different time, that would have been like easily a quarterfinal or a semifinal of majors, but it's a different time. Bencic, the unranked Bencic in there, will play Ostapenko. There's a few absolutely crazy first round matches here on the women's side. And you've got Paula Badosa there. So you got Ostapenko rounding out Coco Gauff's 8th, and Ostapenko or Badosa on the top of Pegula's 8th there. Samsonova, 25th seed there. Marta Kostyuk in that quarter as well. And Pegula will play joint from from Australia, who is a wild card. So that's the top half. A lot of names in there. I feel like there's a lot of names in that top half that you recognize. A lot of them aren't seeded. A lot of them are, but top half seems to be more difficult off the first real in-depth read. Okay. Now excuse me. Fernandez is not the lone Canadian. Rebecca Marino is there as well. Here we are. Okay, Alina Rybakina. She is in the Paolini quarter. So this is the Rybakina 8th. She'll play Jones from Australia. You've got, who else have you got in there? Daria Yastremska at the 32 seed. You got Madison Keys at the 19th seed. Another American match. You got Danimal Collins as the 10 seed in the Rybakina quarter. So if those ladies played each other, it would be an absolute mayhem. There would be, pettiness from Collins, gangsterness from Rybakina, just big hitting on both sides, and coaching drama to abound. Bella Haddad Maya, the 15th seed. Rebecca Marino, our second Canadian in the women's draw, will play Katie Bolter, the 22nd seed. Elina Svitolina, the 28th seed. And then we've got Jasmine Paolini, who will play a qualifier. And now to the bottom quarter, we've got Emma Navarro, again, to play an American. Peyton Stearns, absolutely out of control. Who else is in that quarter? Maria Sakkari at the 31st seed. She'll play Osario from Colombia. Putintseva in there, 24th seed. Daria Kasatkina, the 9th seed, to play in the Emma Navarro 8th. And then Anna Kalinskaya, the sinner, the woman of Sinner. Sinner is the man of Kalinskaya. 13th seed. She's on the 8th of Swiatek, who plays Siniakova in the first round. Swiatek. Emma Raducanu there is unseeded, plays Alexandrova. Swiatek versus Raducanu could be in the third round. Seems unlikely, but could happen. Victoria Azarenka is there. So a lot of big names in that quarter as well. Let's take a look at the Swiatek route to the final. Siniakova, either Volynets or Sramkova. And then she probably would play Alexandrova and then Kalinskaya and then Navarro and then Paolini or Rybakina and then Sabalenka for sure. So again, very even draw in general. I don't think there's too many quarters on both sides that stand out. Sabalenka's does seem a little dense. Sinner's seems a little easier than the others to me. But if I had to pick a winner from the women, it's going to be Sabalenka going for 3. I've never believed in her powers more. On this court, she seems untouchable. And then on the men's, I am leaning Alcaraz, but it's a bit of a pick-up between Sinner, Alcaraz, Djokovic, Zverev, and Medvedev. We're going to see how their tournaments go. We're going to see how they look. I'm so excited to see Djokovic with Andy Murray in his box. I just think that's a crazy turn of events. And yeah, let's see how she goes. But that's how this Australian Open is going to shake down. We've got superstar pairings. We've got Sinner going for the defense of his first major at the Australian Open. And we've got my pick, Carlos Alcaraz, coming in with a fresh haircut. It's going to be good. This is The Slice. Stay here for daily coverage of the Australian Open throughout the tournament on our socials at The Slice Tennis. And follow me at The Slice Steven on Twitter for where I'll be talking about matches as I see them go down. Thanks for being here. Thanks for subscribing. That is a full draw breakdown and prediction of the Australian Open 2025. We'll see you on the next episode of The Slice presented by Betway.